Hello my fellow artisans, welcome back to another day in the life of an electrician, and we're here in sunny Hampshire installing a video doorbell today. So it's going to be a fun little job. One of our YouTube subscribers got in touch and said, I've got a video doorbell and I know that you're good at drilling at angles. So Artisan Drilling Company has been called in to do some interesting angle drilling today, so that's going to be part of the job. Let me walk you in and I'll show you what we're up to. So, welcome to the front door. What we have here is a Ring Video Doorbell that's going to be going in. They're all pretty similar, these kind of video doorbells. We don't fit the Ring ones very often, so I wanted to sort of feature this a little bit. And it's just going to go on here like this. But the challenge with these is always getting power to them because they need 24 volt power, which means you need a transformer and you need to get power from somewhere, right? So how are we going to do that in this job? Well, fortunately for us, the consumer unit is just on the other side of the wall, up there. Ring do supply a plug-in transformer in the box, right? So that looks like this, and this is basically for your average DIYer to be able to drill a hole through the wall, mount the doorbell and then just plug it into a nearby socket. But we're leveling things up today and doing it professionally, so we're going to get rid of that. We're not using that. Customer doesn't want to see any wires or anything. They don't want something plugged into their socket. They want a pro install done. Actually, this is a Ring Video Doorbell Pro, you see. So he's called the pros in today. So what we've got to do is install a DIN mountable transformer in the consumer unit and then get a cable from high up there where the consumer unit is through and down inside the wall somehow to our video doorbell, wire everything up, pair it all up and stuff. Should be fairly straightforward, but you never quite know with these what you're going to find, and the angle drilling and stuff can be a bit tricky. So I'm going to try and drill through the course up at a very steep angle. Now I think it's a cavity wall, so hopefully we can, once we get into the cavity, we can fish up inside the cavity and then we can drill through the back of the consumer unit into the cavity as well and fish a cable through. We've got our trusty super rod mega set, which is the tool of the day today. This is an absolute lifesaver when it comes to jobs like this. So hopefully that's going to go well. But I want to show you a few things as well because I've noticed a few things and I'd like to know your opinion, dear YouTube followers, about whether you think that this is acceptable or not. Because when we got here, I just opened up the meter box and I thought I'll just see, because first of all I wanted to see actually if it's a cavity wall, and it is. So inside there we've got a hole, we can get into the cavity, which is really nice. So we could potentially use that to fish the cables. But what I noticed is, oh look, they've got a garage supply, right? And when I lifted this lid for the garage supply, I noticed this. So come in and have a look. Tell me in the comments why that is not what it should be. So if you notice, it's got a BSEN number, it's a 61008. That means it's an RCD, not an RCBO, which means it has earth leakage protection, but not overcurrent protection. So this cable, which is probably a 6mm armoured or something, is only being protected by the 100 amp main fuse, which means if something goes wrong, dead short between live and neutral, the RCD is not going to trip because there's still a perfectly balanced current between live and neutral, but it's going to blow the main fuse. So whoever fitted that, which looks like it was done in 2015, the customer said that the previous owner actually turned the garage into a studio. So probably that's whoever did that at the time. They did this and it's not really good. So I'm going to have to talk to the customer about that because there's no overcurrent protection for that cable feeding the garage. Now you might say, yeah, but you know, maybe at the other end it's only got a couple of MCBs and so it's never going to be overloaded or whatever. Let me know your thoughts about that situation in the comments. Now I'm not doing an EICR here, so I'm not really here to judge the existing installation, but obviously as a duty of care to my customer I have to bring to their attention anything that's not quite right. So let me know what you would say if you were doing an EICR for this property, for example. How would you code it? Would it be a C3 or a C2 or maybe even a C1? I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. But anyway, that's sort of a bit of a sideline thing I just wanted to show you guys. The other thing what we've got as well, just as a little observation, is the main tails here. These are the main tails going to the consumer unit in the house. They go in the bottom here, but these are 16mm squared. These are 25. So with a 100 amp main fuse, really the tails should be 25mm, not 16. Again, it's just a little observation of something that I'll mention to the customer. So that's the meter box. Now what I'm going to do is poke a rod up inside the wall, inside this meter box in the cavity, and just see how far we can get it up. Because hopefully it'll go all the way up to where the consumer unit is, but you never know if there's going to be something in there. Okay, that's good. So we're right up to the top now. So we're right up to there, which means that we've got a hollow void inside the cavity wall that we can use to fish the cable, which is great. So that means that I reckon I can drill through from the back of the consumer unit straight into the cavity. 300 miles.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. So you've already noticed we just got interrupted there. This is the hilarious thing about having a Tesla, is that wherever you go, people comment on it. So the neighbour just came over and was like, "What's the range on that thing, mate?" And then he was asking us about it. And last time I was filming with Nathan doing an EV charge point, somebody did exactly the same thing. It's quite funny, but we ended up in a long conversation about the amazingness of Tesla cars, so that was fun. Where were we? So we're going to fish this up here, right? So we can get the rod up all the way up to the ceiling, which is great. So I'm hoping we can drill here at an angle to just above the meter box where the hole is inside here, get a cable to there, then from there fish it up the wall and drill an angle through from the consumer unit, back of the consumer unit, and that way we've got our route for our cable. That's in theory, but let's see if we can do it in practice. So here we are at the consumer unit, and it's an MK consumer unit, dual RCD main switch, and we've got a couple of spare ways here where we can potentially fit our transformer. So I'm just going to take the cover off and see how much space we've got inside, because you never quite know with the way that it's been wired up. Okay, that's pretty decent. And we've already got holes in the back, so we might be able to fish a cable through straight in without having to drill another hole. Let's get my light in there and have a look. Okay, yes, there's quite a big void behind here actually. It looks like we're straight into the cavity behind there. So that is potentially means that we can rod straight up and we should be able to see the rod inside here. But I'll throw a rod up and just see if you can see it. Yeah, no, actually I can see now. So they've chopped out the bricks here, but we're not into the cavity yet there. So we do have to drill still through those bricks. So I'm gonna have to drill another hole in the back of this consumer unit. It's weird how they've done it, but basically they've just like chased out a load of the block. So that you've got a layer of block here, then you've got a cavity, and then you've got brick on the other side. And they've chased out a load of the block behind the consumer unit. That's why they've put this wooden board over to kind of like give them a solid fixing. But they've not gone all the way through the block into the cavity. So what I've got is a 32mm hole saw. I'll cut an extra hole here so we're not risking damaging any of the other cables. And then I'll drill through into the cavity, and then we'll try and fish down. It's a bit of a mess. Okay, so I'm just going to turn the power off while I do this because it's always safer to do it that way. And it gives me a chance to just test the RCDs for the customer as well to make sure that they work, which they do, which is good. So we're going to drill a hole through the back of this consumer unit, so we've got a separate hole to work with and we're not risking damaging any of the other cables. It's a 32mm hole, going to go in like that. So we're through the metal. The board was cut out a little bit further than the edge as well, so that probably gives us enough space, which is great. So we don't need to drill the wood, which is always nice. Welcome to Artisan Angle Drilling Company. Today we're going to be using this. It's a 10mm and it's about 50 centimeters long. We're going to start inside, drill down at an angle as much as we can. This is just thick enough to get one of those super rods in. So we'll get a super rod in, sort of a flexible one, and then we'll try and hook it from below, and hopefully that'll be our cable route sorted. Let's go inside and try. Just make sure that there aren't any cables there when I start drilling. It looks good. I might just take this off the wall. It's It's only 4 screws and I'll get a better view behind it then. Quite tight, these cables. Ah, okay, I see. Right, I see what we're doing now. So I can see the cavity here. There is actually an entrance into the cavity because the 16mm earth that feeds this consumer unit is coming up in the cavity. So they've had to chop out the bricks there to get into the cavity for that. So I think we can get up here. If we hit the rods right, we should just be able to fish up without actually having to drill any more from this side. So I'm just measuring to make sure that where I poke the rod up in the meter box, I'm aiming in the right direction. We need to be about 35 centimeters from the edge of this brick here to where the hole is in the cavity. So I'll measure the other side and just make sure that I'm aiming in the right direction. Because quite a small one, we've got about that much space where the cavity is open behind here, where we can get up. It's a little bit tight, but we should, if we get it in the right direction, we should manage it. So 35, actually, yeah, so that's interesting. I was sort of aiming off in this direction, but actually it's pretty much straight up, or if anything, slightly to the left. So that's probably why I was struggling. Yeah, there we go. Right, so what I did there is I put the rod with the beads on the end, and now I'm gonna put this rod in with the magnet. So that is a magnet. And the goal is to catch the beads with the magnet. So I'm going to put the magnet in on the inside and try and find them. Once I get them through, I can tie something on, pull the rod back down. That's how it works in theory. Oh yes, I can see it. I can see the beads, so that is it. We have won. Right, so watch this. Right, I've got the beads. Here we go, look. Hope you're getting the magnet from the consumer. The magnet's attaching to the consumer unit. Yeah, there we go. Oh, so close. I think I'm just going to have to grip it with my finger when it comes in. There we go, got it. Fan-dabby-doozy, look at that. These are amazing. These just save my life every time. So all I need to do now is tie my cable onto there, pull the rod down, and we're inside. We're into the meter box then, and then it's only about a foot to where the doorbell needs to be. So Super Rod saves the day once again. Link in the description. Tool of the day. Okay, so what I'm doing, I'm going to use this cable from the transformer that's supplied with the doorbell. It's rated at 300 volts, so it's absolutely fine to be in the consumer unit. That's obviously something you need to consider. For example, if you're using single insulated cable, like just normal bell wire, you shouldn't really use that in the consumer unit, so you would have to sleeve that with some kind of sleeving to make it rated at the right voltage. But this is, it says on the cable 300 volts, so that's fine. I've taped it on here, and so all we have to do now, pull the rod down, and this should pull the cable down into the meter box, as long as it doesn't get stuck. I'm going to just make sure that there's enough slack on this that it doesn't get stuck on its way down with any kinks or anything. I think that'll do the trick. Hopefully that'll slide through all right. Just needs to lift up slightly, so I think it's catching on the metal and the board. That's it. Yeah. Okay, here we are. That is our cable. And now that we're here, what I'm hoping is if I just drill at an angle from here into the cavity again, then we can just fish that through and out to where the doorbell is, and then we're good to go. That's the hardest bit done really now, because inside cavities, you just never know what's going to be there. Like you might have seen a video that I made a while ago, Nightmare Consumer Unit Change, where we had to pull in new tails. They were 16mm and I was changing the consumer unit, but they'd run the tails in the cavity. I tried to use the old tails to pull the new ones in, and what happened was it looked like they'd actually clipped the tails inside the cavity, so it was impossible to pull in the new ones on the old ones. I kept getting stuck. So it was just a real pain, and in the end I had to drill through the wall and run them up in trunking on the other side, which wasn't really a nice result, but it was, I was there till midnight I think on that job. I ended up like wrestling with these tails for so long, literally half the day just wrestling with the tails, trying to get them in, because the customer really wanted for me to be able to get them into the cavity because he didn't want to see them obviously, and I was like really determined, like, I can do it, I know I can do it. I just wasted so much time trying to do it, and in the end I just gave up. But yeah, it's a funny video. I'll leave a link up here somewhere, you can watch that one if you've not seen it already. Anyway, it did make quite an entertaining video. I was finished about midnight and I was just like, I was in such a state by the end of it. So here we go, we'll mark this, drill this at an angle now, and hopefully we'll just pull that in, mount the doorbell on, and we'll be getting there, I think. Okay, so we're going to mount that there, and then what we're going to do is use the little level on here to get the holes level. It's not the most reliable of levels, as long as it looks okay. Tiny little bubble in that, that looks fine. And then we use this marksman tool just to give a little mark on the wall where we need to drill. It's quite handy. Ta-da! And then we'll just drill these with the drill. Yeah, this is the drill bit that's supplied with the ring. So this is the moment of truth. Make sure I drill in the right spot there. So I need to go in the middle, basically. But yeah, we're in the cavity. So now, should be able to poke that through there. And no, that's not going to work. This is where the flexible rods come in sometimes, because what's happening is I'm poking through, yeah, that's it, right? With a stiff rod, I'm poking through the cavity, but the gap is only probably about this much. So what I'm doing is when I'm using one of these stiff red rods like this, I'm literally going through the hole in the cavity and just hitting the bricks on the other side, and it's not allowing me to, it's not flexible enough to bend and go into the cavity. This rod is, this is the nylon ones that come in the set, and this is, see that's in the cavity now. I can feel this low voltage cable that I've plugged in. Oh yeah, here we go. Ha, just with my fingers, I can fish the rod. Yeah, I got it. Yeah, there we go. Voila, voila mon passeport. So now, what we need to do is just take that low voltage cable onto there, like so, and pull it through. Very nice. Do it without damaging it. It's a little bit tight, so rather than keep trying and risk it pulling off, what I usually do if it's a bit tight is just double, take two, tape this bit together as well, because it's just catching when I try to pull it through. It's like it's not worth the risk of thinking, oh, it'll go, and giving it an extra yank and then it pulling off, and then you break your cable or you lose your rod or whatever. It's better to just be doubly sure. So make sure it's tied on really nice and securely. Hopefully this time that'll go through fine, he says. Not quite sure why that's getting stuck. Oh, okay, it's literally just because I've drilled a 10mm hole, that there is about 10mm wide, so that's where it's getting stuck. Here you can see the brick dust, that's where it's getting stuck in the hole, so it's going in, this part's going in, but that part is just slightly wider where the end, the little nodule thing, connector on the end of the rod is, and that is probably just slightly more than 10mm, and so it's getting stuck. So I'm going to just drill it out to a slightly bigger hole, then that'll slide through perfectly. Gonna have to undo this now again, and then unless I've got a second nylon rod that I can use, but No, I've only got one. That's one thing you need to improve on, Super Rod. Give us more than one nylon rod in the set, because these nylon rods, they are brilliant, but they tend to get pretty knackered pretty quickly. You can see this one, it's just been bent all over the place and it's not straight now. And if you've only got one, you really rely on it a lot. I know that Vanessa from Super Rod watches our videos, so she'll probably take this on board. They're really good like that, actually. Right, there we go. Voila. Now, I've just drilled like a 16mm hole now, so it should go like really easily. But I'll tie this on as far down the cable as I can anyway, just to kind of help. You do have these cable sleeves, cable pulling sleeves with the Super Rod set, which are good, but on such a thin cable like this, the sleeves that I've got are too big, so they won't actually grip onto the cable. There you go, you see? Make life easy for yourself. Don't wrestle with stuff, just if it's not working, just rethink. Because I could have been wrestling with that for ages and then it would have got stuck in the wall. Brains, not brawn, people. I say that because, you know, Corey's far more muscly than I am, so he uses his brawn. Bob's your uncle. If anyone knows where the expression Bob's your uncle came from, let me know in the comments. Do you ever do that when you say something and you think, why did I just say that? Where did that even come from? There's quite a few expressions like that that must have quite an interesting origin. Let me know all your favourite expressions and their explanations down in the comments. We can have a little bit of an English lesson for all our foreign viewers who come from abroad and who think, like I know in the Netherlands they have some hilarious little expressions like don't tie the cat on the bacon, that's one of them. And there's that Dutch footballer as well who comes out with some hilarious things. I can't remember his name. Van Persie, I think it is. They're always talking about Van Persie and some of the stuff that he comes out with. So yeah, let me know all your funny expressions from wherever you come from. Let's get the doorbell on the wall. Right, so this end, what we've got to do here is put this BG transformer in. Now, why am I using a BG transformer and not an MK one? Short answer is MK don't do a 24 volt transformer. They only do the standard traditional 8 volt bell transformers, which won't be enough for this particular Ring Video Doorbell. So there are very few transformers actually that are suitable on the market. This is the one that we usually use. Now, the thing is, some of you might say you shouldn't install that in there because the BG transformer is not type tested for an MK consumer unit. And yeah, I suppose technically you're right. But let's think about this. They all basically come out of the same factory anyway. This is safety tested by its own manufacturer and there's plenty of room in there. It's not like you're going to get a massive heat build up or something like that. There's plenty of room for the heat to dissipate. What I'm going to do is shift these across so that I've got a little bit of space next to the transformer as well, so that it's got space both sides, which means that, you know, there's space for the heat to dissipate. The only way to install this without putting in the consumer unit enclosure would be to install another enclosure next to it. And I just think that's a bit over the top. It's not really necessary, and it's very unlikely that this is going to cause any problems for not being type tested. It's just a technicality basically. But let me know if you think I'm wrong in the comments. I know that some of you probably will, and I always like to hear your reasoning about things, you know. At the end of the day, we've got to make our own engineering judgment about stuff like this. And for me, the disadvantage and the aesthetic disadvantage of putting in an extra enclosure, which technically I'd have to put a BG enclosure there, which would look awful. The customer wouldn't be happy with it. That is a bigger downside for me than the technical disadvantage of putting a BG transformer in an MK consumer unit. But there we go, I'm putting my neck on the line there probably. I'm probably going to get slaughtered in the comments. So what we're going to do is take the bus bar. I always say buzz bar and everyone's like, no, it's not buzz bar, it's bus bar. So I'm taking the bus bar out, right? I'm going to take the bus bar out of this one as well, which will then give me enough room to fit this BG transformer and have a bit of space either side for heat dissipation. So we're going to have to cut this bus bar down slightly, almost said, and then we're going to cut this one down as well. So I need to mark that, cut that one down there, cut one way off of this one, put those back, and then I'm going to wire the low voltage cable out of the 24 volt side And then I'm going to put some mains power into this side of it, which I'll just wire off one of the lighting circuits, and then hopefully everything will work. So this is the low voltage side, and in reality it doesn't actually matter which way around you do these. There's no polarity on the terminals on the other end, but obviously it's got a black and a red wire, so I'm going to just use the black wire as the 0 volts and the red wire as the 24 volts. And I'm going to put ferrules on these. Actually, they're so thin that I'm going to need a really tiny little ferrule. So I've got my little ferrule case here. Whoa, this has already been dropped once, this ferrule case, as you probably saw in another recent video. Complete jumble. And the time it would take me to actually reorganize this, I think probably I would rather just buy a new one because they're so cheap, these things. But for the moment I'm just plucking out the ones that I can when I need them. And they just slide over the end of the wires. Make sure none of the strands are outside of the ferrule because they can end up sort of doubling back and causing you problems, but they should go on like that. And then these beautiful expensive Nipex ferrule crimping tool does a wonderful job, and as Corey says, do it 3 times just to be sure. There we go. It's a nice solid connection. 0 volts is your black wire, and that goes in there like that. Then red wire, 24 volts. This transformer's got several outputs, so you can connect 12 volts or 8 volts off of it as well, but we're just using 24 volts. And that is it, good to go. So I'm going to just do a ZE test on this board just to make sure that everything's as it should be. That's an external earth fault loop impedance test. It's basically just to check that the supply cable's okay and that the main earth coming in is acceptable. Especially if we're going to change the board later, it makes sense to know about any issues that there might be now so that we can prepare for them later on. But I'm sure it's fine as it's a fairly modern house. It's from the 1980s. So I'll do ZE. I'll check with my mirror underneath here just to make sure that the bus bar teeth are all in properly, and then we'll liven it up and hopefully it all works. So this is the main incoming earth. So what we do is, actually, let me do it this way. We have to disconnect all bonding conductors when we're doing an external earth fault loop impedance. So usually I would just disconnect the bonding conductors, but in this case, because there's 2 of them, I would just disconnect the main earth instead and do it like that. So we just get onto there, and then we get onto the main live tail coming in, and we do it on the high current earth loop impedance test. 0.32, which is fine. I believe it's a TNCS system, so the maximum acceptable reading is 0.35, so we're within that, which is good. And then what I'll do is reconnect that, and then just do another test with it reconnected, just to see what the reading is and to check the prospective fault current on the installation. We're just doing minor works, so you don't even record half of these readings on there, but it's just, I like to check anyway, just to make sure. So that is our prospective fault current, which is the maximum current that can flow to neutral in this case, in the event of a fault. So imagine if someone cut through the main tails coming into the board, that's the resistance of those main tails, and therefore that means that 790 amps is the maximum amount of current that can flow through. So what we have to check is the circuit breakers in the consumer unit, if they are rated to be able to withstand that maximum prospective fault current, and these are rated at 6,000 amps, so that's more than capable. Yeah, just a little explanation of why we do that test, really. So we're good to go. What I'm going to do is just liven up everything, and then we'll see if we can get a picture on our video doorbell. So that's it. One video doorbell up and running. and just in time because it just started raining. So I hope you've enjoyed this little video. If you have, don't forget to hit a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, why not think about doing so? It's free and you get to join our Artisan journey because we've got much more interesting content coming up very soon. Thanks for watching and have a great day.